It's Monday, and that so happens to be the day that I like to talk about monsters. Hello, and welcome to Monster Mondays. I'm Geoff Arbuckle, co-host of the podcast Film Seizure, that you can catch each Wednesday at filmseizure.com or at a number of podcast providers online. We're headed to Lighthouse Island in Lake Michigan to hunt ourselves a monster, my mateys. To kick off 2026 at Monster Mondays, I'm going to look at Ryland Bricks and Cole 2's 2018 horror comedy Lake Michigan Monster. Now, before we dive in, and if you missed last week's episode, let me describe what's happening this year at Monster Mondays. Each month from January to July, I'm going to take a look at a particular decade's worth of monster movies. This month, I'll be looking at movies from the 2010s. Next month is the 60s, then the month after that, the 50s, and so on. No particular order of decades, no particular chronological order within each month. But then in August, I'm going to cover 4 more movies before August 31st, which will be the final episode of Monster Mondays. But enough about that. Let's talk about Lake Michigan Monster. So this comes from, as I mentioned just a moment ago, Ryland Bricks and Cole 2's. He's kind of been a bit of an indie maverick lately in the realm of comedy. While it was finished and hit the festival circuit in 2022, his acting and scripting follow-up to this movie, Hundreds of Beavers, made 2 of the 3 top 10 lists in 2024 in Film Seizure's annual Best Of episode. It was directed by someone else, but RBCT, nice little shorthand there for 2's, wrote and starred in that hilarious film. Now, the idea for this movie came up when 2's was getting ready to leave Milwaukee, Wisconsin to move to Los Angeles. He was visiting Lake Michigan with a friend of his, and the 2 started joking around about seeing a mermaid wash up out of the lake. And the conversation led to 2's thinking that he had something here to work with, so he wrote up the screenplay and was quite heavily inspired by the humor found from Monty Python, early Simpsons, and Sam Raimi, especially the comedy and visuals from Evil Dead 2. Absolutely, that is on display here because there's a lot of quick cuts, a lot of quick zoom-ins, just the frenetic pace of how things are edited in this absolutely takes from Evil Dead 2. Now, later on, 2 swapped out the mermaid for a full-on lake monster by 2's and his co-writer and Hundreds of Beavers director, Mike Cheslick. They kind of decided that, to have a brisk pace to keep people from focusing too much on the budget limitations. So they decided to go with that instead of it being a mermaid that had to look a specific way, which I think probably inspired the entire look of this movie to kind of keep the budget limitations a little bit hidden behind the style and the way that they would kind of edit, the way they would just kind of focus on the kind of cartoonish elements of it and so forth. But 2's also wrote the dialogue and characters based around his friends, whom he then put into this movie. So since they weren't actually trained actors, they were pretty much playing pretty close to themselves. Now, when the film went into production, filming took about 16 months. The budget of $7,000 was 2's mostly raised from his job as a pizza delivery guy. And to design the monster itself, Joe Castro came in to help actor Eric West. Now, West was the friend who 2's joked about finding a mermaid in Lake Michigan that led to this getting made. And also, Eric West plays one of the other main characters in this movie. So Castro had worked for decades as a special effects artist. I mean, he worked on horror movies like Evil Toons and Night of the Demons 3. And then after finishing this movie, Lake Michigan Monster hit the film festivals, and its first ever screening was at, appropriately, the Milwaukee Film Festival in October 2018. It ended up building fast after that. For another year plus, it played several more horror and genre film festivals, like the Fantasia Film Festival in Montreal. It got enough attention that by July 2020, Arrow Films came along to acquire the rights for distribution. And just a month later, it hit home video. Critics loved it, viewers loved it, and now it's time for us to talk about what actually happens in Lake Michigan Monster. So, at the beginning of the movie, we meet Captain Seafield. He introduces himself and how a month prior, he and his father set out into Lake Michigan. They encountered a sea monster that attacked and dragged his father into the murky depths to his doom. Then, when Seafield reported it to the disbelieving authorities who told him that there was no such thing as sea monsters, he decided that he needed to get revenge on the beast that killed his father himself. So he's assembling a team of his own, which he calls the Team of the Century. Weapons expert Sean Shaughnessy, sonar individual Nedge Pepsi, and former naval officer Dick Flynn. Now, his team isn't so sure that Seafield knows anything about what he's talking about. Seafield said that he and his father was only 1 fathom from his home on Lighthouse Island when they were attacked. But a fathom is only 6 feet, so he's not exactly clear also about the size of the creature, only showing 2 little toys of a lion and a tiger and saying it's about the size of a lion. Also, he doesn't exactly have a typical seafaring boat. He has a pontoon. Now, they set up on the shore of Lake Michigan with Sean Shaughnessy providing Dick Flynn with his monster-killing weapon of choice, a giant serrated sword. And when Dick doesn't come back up quickly to show that he's killed the monster, Sean shoots into the water with a machine gun, nearly killing Dick. But when Dick says that there's nothing in the lake, Seafield shrugs, tells them they did the best they could, and invite all of them back to his home in the lighthouse to share in some bourbon. Now, for the second attempt to find the Lake Michigan monster, it's the same plan as the first, except this time Dick is going to swim naked. Seafield thought, well, maybe the monster is a lady, and of course a swimming naked man then might be alluring to the lady monster. And this time, while Dick is in the water, Sean Shaughnessy sees a monster's hand coming up out of the water. Nedge sees a blip on her sonar. Then the blip expands to surround Dick and then attacks. Dick is pulled under the water, but says that the monster just eventually let him go and swam away. Dick later says that the creature is not the size of a lion, but actually more like the size of a tiger. It's that big. Now, for the next attempt, Seafield brings in his brother Ashcroft, who says the only way to catch a monster is to set out into the sea at night, because, well, monsters come out at night, don't you know? But he also provides them with a giant hook to bait the monster, and the Team of the Century attaches the hook to a big chain, and they end up having a second encounter with the monster, but the creature just leaves a note in its language saying, "Be seeing you." The next morning, Seafield finds an egg that seems to be related to the monster, and then Seafield orders Sean Shaughnessy to destroy the egg, which he does with many shots from a machine gun, to the point that it destroys the chair that it was sitting on as well. Now, when the monster discovered Sean destroyed the egg, it attacks and kills him. Dick is angry because when he was attacked by the monster, Dick and the monster actually mated, and it's revealed that the egg was actually the unborn child of Dick and the sea monster. So one member of the team is dead, the second quit out of anger, and that only leaves Nedge, and she's starting to ask some questions about Seafield's story about the attack. He told them that he's a ship captain, but he is not. He doesn't live in the lighthouse. The lighthouse is just a museum that he basically squats in. He's not a captain. His father and Ashcroft were captains, but he's just play acting as this kind of wealthy mariner. But he's also not rich, which means that all of these checks that he's paid to this team that he's assembled, they ain't gonna cash. So when she learns the truth, she now leaves too. So Ashcroft warns Seafield that he's a cursed man, and he is basically going to be haunted by the ghost of Sean Shaughnessy until he kills the thing that killed Sean. So he basically warns him he basically tells him he's got to go to the catacombs to avenge their father and his friend while he still can. I mean, he is basically a dead man walking at this point. But after failing to talk Nedge and Dick into returning to help him, he's chased by the ghost of Sean Shaughnessy. The ghost chases him onto a ferry he thinks is headed to Lighthouse Island, but the curse and the ghost seem to be causing a whole bunch of shenanigans as the boat is actually moving backwards towards Milwaukee. And when he tries to correct course and head in the right direction, Seafield's lack of knowledge about being a real ship captain nearly causes him to sink the ship, but he lucks into fixing it. And on Lighthouse Island, Ashcroft is attacked and killed by the sea monster, and upon returning to the lighthouse, Seafield finds Ashcroft's head on a pike. And Ashcroft, before dying, tells his brother that the reason why they never knew their mother is because his father harpooned her. Their father kind of had a penchant for harpooning people. And so that's why they never knew their mother, was that their father killed her basically with a harpoon. But Seafield then goes into the catacombs, which is an area underneath the lighthouse, where he finds his father's ghost army to fight the sea monster. Yes, not only is is Seafield and Ashcroft's father a good old classic sea captain, but he apparently also has a whole army of ghosts, like in a, I don't know, Scooby-Doo cartoon or something, to fight his fights for him. But when Seafield dispatches the ghost army to fight the sea monster, it turns out to be a massacre, and the ghost army it basically entirely gets destroyed and killed. And then the sea monster taunts Seafield to come fight her himself. So Seafield swims into the lake to the monster's lair, only to be attacked by Sean Shaughnessy again. And after being chased by the ghost, Seafield enters the creature's underground lair, which kind of looks a little bit like a castle you put into a fish tank, but one of the nicer ones, one of the nicer fish tank ornaments. But he eventually comes face to face with the monster, which is basically a sea hag with giant sharp teeth, clawed fingers, and a long snake body. Turns out the sea monster is actually Seafield's sister. Their father was a drunk and would mate with a sea creature, but when he came home sober because he went to the liquor store 5 minutes after the store closed at 12:05 a.m., he saw their mother for what she was, because he was now sober. Grossed out by her, he harpooned her. But as a peace offering, she mated with Dick, but Seafield rejected it. And after killing his nephew, she had to even the score, so she killed Ashcroft. But it seems that Seafield's going to accept the ceasefire, but ultimately he tricks her and stabs her because he doesn't believe her story, because everyone knows that Milwaukee liquor stores close at 9 o'clock and not midnight, as she said. And she's like, well, why? Why 9 o'clock? That seems ridiculous. And he's like, I think it's to get the local economy up by you going to restaurants and bars instead of going to liquor stores. But he kills the creature, which ultimately frees him from the curse that had him be chased by Sean Shaughnessy. Seafield, having pledged his life to his father's ghost army, then transforms into one of the ghosts. So let's talk about the three things I like about Lake Michigan Monster. First, there are a lot of different kinds of comedies. I mean, there are the ones that mix in some sort of drama, be it a coming-of-age story or, I don't know, a romance, etc. There's the Zucker and Abrams movies that are parodies and throw constant jokes at you. There are cartoonish comedies, too, where everyone's kind of an idiot. And that's where this movie resides. I mean, some of my favorite comedies don't always have the Zucker-Abrams model, where it's just constant big laughs being thrown at you one after the other. Airplane and The Naked Gun are great, but some of my most favorite comedies are ones that have a lot of snickering reactions from me, with bigger laughs kind of sprinkled through the runtime. And Lake Michigan Monster is just a nice, fun, silly, cartoonish comedy. I like the characters, I like the gags, I like the quick pace and the breakneck speed of the editing for comedic effect. again, like I said, that kind of plays from the Sam Raimi mold of quick cutting things for emphasis or for a quick snicker or whatever. I love the way that Twos plays Seafield. You quickly understand this guy within minutes of the movie starting. He's clearly stupid and in over his head. That's very similar to Simpsons comedy, right? That was one of the inspirations. It's having a main character like Homer Simpson who is an idiot, but somehow succeeds and fails upwards somehow. But, because you get this tone of this movie through him very quickly, you can accept that he's, able to successfully pretend to be a rich sea captain who lives in a lighthouse. But the lighthouse is actually a museum that he just kind of hangs out in. He's not really rich. He just plays himself off as rich. He's not even a sea captain. He just plays, he's kind of cosplaying this, right? So he kind of gets away with this without many consequences until his father was killed by the sea monster and he decides to take revenge on it. But, besides, twice before the revelation that he's none of these things, or that he's, he's squatting in a museum, you see him be shooed away from a classroom and a graveyard when he's bringing the team of the Century up to speed on what he's asking them to do, or when they're burying Sean Shaughnessy. You can also have fun with the fact that he's being chased underwater while also breathing heavily from the tension and the exertion. It's just cartoonish behavior. It's a fun cartoonish comedy that's very entertaining. Next, Twos does a very good job crafting a comedy, yes, but also does an excellent job directing the other characters in the film too. There's very little backstory given to some of the characters. Sean Shaughnessy is a weapons expert. We see him carrying weapons around all the time. Nedge Pepsi is a sonar individual. That's exactly how they refer to her as. She refers to herself at one point as a sonar individual. But, it's all about, you're told about, that's all that that's really said about either one of them. Yet you do kind of know how they would react to things or what to expect from them. Nedge is kind of smart and a little scientific, being a sonar individual, so she questions things. Sean Shaughnessy is a man of action who will jump into the fray at a moment's notice. Dick is the one you kind of know the best of the team because only because he explains how he did all this stuff with music in the Navy and that he got dishonorably discharged for some significant number of sexual misdemeanors against members of the band he conducted. All of this is told deadpan by Dick, but the others' reactions and furthering of the information is done in a very funny way. Yes, you have side characters like Ashcroft or this older woman who pops up a couple of times, who's actually Seafield's wife, who are both very cartoonish in either presentation or explanation. But the straight characters, the straight men, are funny in a dry way, and once the spell, if you want to call it that, is broken with Seafield not being rich nor even a sea captain, Nedge and Dick handle his buffoonery in a way that is either dry funny or, I suppose, the most accurate way to say it, as his foils. They foil him. So the other characters really help fill this movie out and sometimes lead to their own very funny moments as an ensemble. Third, this is a masterclass in how to make a movie look and feel like it's from a different era. In some regards, it looks like a movie from the early silent era. At times, it kind of looks like that movie about the people who take a rocket ship to the moon and run into those little moon people, A Trip to the Moon. The movie uses the sort of effects where there are props in the front of the set and behind to kind of create this full-fledged 3D kind of, being in the sea monster's cavernous lair, while also using animation or other types of elements to build out special effects. So there are moments in this that kind of look like something from 1915, but at other times, the movie looks like something from 1955, with concepts of having a sonar operator with a weapons expert who can help destroy the monster, which means that there's that kind of old-fashioned pseudo-scientific reasoning behind who's going to be your team to hunt and kill the monster. Then a lot of the dialogue and delivery, especially from Tusa Seafield, is like watching an unearthed lost film by Ed Wood. Yeah, you know this is a 2018 movie, but it also looks and feels like it's from just a different time period. Nothing irritates me more than when indie filmmakers force the look and feel of the film itself, like, adding unnecessary scratches or film grain or whatever. Yes, this movie has some effects like that, but those only enhance the feeling of something out of time as opposed to forcing you to think it's from a particular time frame. So it's all of that kind of the way it's acted, the way it's shot, the way it's edited, the way it's some of the dialogue is worded. The black and white certainly helps it. So it's a very well crafted little monster comedy movie, just as much in the technical department as it is in the comedic timing and writing. Well, that wraps up this week's Monster Mondays. You can catch new episodes of Monster Mondays each Monday at filmseizure.com. Don't forget to follow Film Seizure at Facebook, Threads, Instagram, and Blue Sky. You can also subscribe to Film Seizure to get both the Wednesday morning Film Seizure podcast and the Monday afternoon Monster Mondays show at your favorite podcast providers, as well as YouTube. You can also check out my website, bmovieenema.com, to read new reviews every Friday morning. Next time, we go to England and celebrate Guy Fawkes Night while also fighting off an alien invasion in 2011's Attack the Block. Until next week, stay spooky.